to extend warm welcome to all the distinguished guests, paper presenters, and delegates to the two-day National Conference on Climate Change and Sustainable Development. I would like to read a verse from Holy Bible. I brought you into a plentiful country to eat the fruit thereof and the goodness thereof. But ye entered, ye filled my land and made my heritage an abomination. As human beings, we are vulnerable to confusing the unprecedented with the improbable. In our everyday experience, if something has never happened before, we generally safe in assuming it is not going to happen in the future, but the exceptions can kill you, and climate change is one of those exceptions. Ban Ki-moon voices his opinion strongly on this theme. Saving our planet, lifting people out of poverty, advancing economic growth, these are one and the same fight. We must connect the dots between climate change, water scarcity, energy shortages, global health, food security, sustainable development, and women's empowerment. Solutions to one problem must be solutions for all. I consider it a great honor to welcome Dr. Mohandas Manandar, Chief Guest for the inaugural, onto the dais. Dr. Mohandas Manandar is advisor to DRAN on Nepal. He is a policy expert in the areas of inclusive development, development management, organizational development, and social inclusion. Dr. Manandar was a policy advisor to Nepal's National Inclusion Commission at the Prime Minister's Office, Government of Nepal. Having designed a research program on social inclusion in Nepal, he helped in establishing the Norwegian-funded Social Inclusion Research Fund, SIRF, in 2008, where he worked as the senior advisory for policy and institutionalization. May I request Dr. Usha Nuri to present bouquet to the guest. I request Dr. Samar Verma to grace the dais. Dr. Samar Verma is a senior program officer for the Think Tank Initiative based at IDRC's regional office in New Delhi. He also worked with Oxfam GB and served as South Asia Regional Policy Advisor in 2005 before becoming team leader of their Global Economic Justice Policy in 2006, based in Oxford, UK. He is also the founding executive director of the Center for Trade and Development, a Delhi-based regional think tank. Before joining Oxfam GB, he also worked as senior fellow with the Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations in New Delhi and published widely on international trade and competitiveness, particularly related to textiles. May I request Ms. Kiranmai to present a bouquet. Next, we look forward for the presence of Shri B. Kalyan Chakrabarti on the dais. Shri B. Kalyan Chakrabarti, IAS, is Director General EPTRI. He held various positions in the Government of Assam and the Government of India in the Departments of Agriculture, Finance, Revenue, Land Revenue Management and District Administration, Urban Development Administration and Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution. He made efforts to get power and telecommunication facilities in the remote subdivision of Jonai. He was Deputy Secretary Industries, Manager Director of ASCON, Director Amtron. Besides developing special provisions for food processing in the industrial policy of the state, he also significantly contributed to the IT policy of the state of Assam. He effectively handled law and order issues in the most insurgency-prone but culturally vibrant district of Assam by bringing synergy in the efforts of the army, CPMFS, police and people. May I now request Dr. Meher Karuna to present a bouquet to the guest. With equal pleasure, I invite Dr. Sultan Hafiz Rahman onto the dais. Dr. Sultan Hafiz Rahman is serving as the Executive Director of BRAC, Institute of Governance and Development, BRAC University. Dr. Rahman is leading the restructuring of BITD and he is actively involved in research and academic matters of the institute. He is also the ex officio member of BITD Advisory Council. He started his professional career in Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies in 1975 and joined the Asian Development Bank in September 1992. He retired from the ADB as Director General, South Asia in June 2012, which was the senior-most position held by any Bangladeshi in an international organization. May I request Dr. Shulabna Sarkar to present a bouquet. I am pleased to invite our beloved Director, Professor R.K. Mishra, on the dais. He is a member of the UN Task Force on International Task Force on Standards of Excellence in Public Administration and Education, and he is on the steering committee of several national and international bodies. Professor Mishra has also been a researcher for Planning Commission, Finance Commission, Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, State Bureaus of Public Enterprises, financial institutions and banks, and has, to his credit, several books and international papers and reports. May I request Dr. Usha Noori to present a bouquet. I am immensely pleased to welcome Dr. P.S. Janaki Krishna onto the dais. Dr. P.S. Janaki Krishna is Associate Professor and Coordinator, Center for Sustainable Development at Institute of Public Enterprise, Hyderabad. She has vast experience in research, teaching and technology transfer and is experienced in dealing with various stakeholder organizations. She is also involved in technology monitoring and evaluation. She is one of the regular writers for an international news report, Information Systems for Biotechnology News Report, being published by Virginia Polytech and State University, USA, and a member of e-agriculture community of FAO. Dr. Krishna has authored books and several papers in national and international journals. Her areas of interest include technology management, public-private partnerships, biotechnology and emerging issues, climate change and sustainable development. May I request Dr. Shulabna Sarkar to present a bouquet. I am immensely pleased to welcome Dr. C.H. Lakshmi Kumari onto the dais. Dr. C.H. Lakshmi Kumari is Assistant Professor in Economics at Institute of Public Enterprise, Hyderabad. She has been associated with the institution in various activities, teaching, training, research and consultancy assignments. Dr. Kumari has worked for several projects at national and international level and has published many reports. Her areas of interest include economics, privatization strategies, restructuring and turnaround management issues, financial performance analysis, venture capital, environmental impact analysis, manpower rationalization issues and recruitment process of manpower in companies. May I request Dr. Meher Karuna to present a bouquet. I now request our beloved Director, Professor R.K. Mishra, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Dr. Jain. How happy we feel at IP at this moment. Very difficult to express our joy. And also our gratitude to the dignitaries on the dais. Dr. Samar Verma is the force behind the institute. If we have been able to think something which is outside, I'll very honestly tell that we borrow ideas from him. Of course, we are in the field of management. In management, nothing we have of our own. Management discipline survives only by borrowing. And he is a great lender of ideas, great lender of strength, great lender of giving the force to think, to move ahead, to think positively. There are many qualities. I think that's how I think he can discharge his responsibilities of promoting research, of promoting ideas, not only for India, but for the entire Asian region. And I think the next century will belong, this century also will belong to Asia. So he is leading all of us. We are extremely grateful to Dr. Verma. Very difficult for him to spare time. You can understand that he has cut short his visits, and he will have no time, I think, and he will then embark on several other things. Just, I think, after the conclusion of this seminar. We are also very grateful to Mohandas ji, who has been a mover a shaker, and also a person who is change driver in Nepal. The Nepal of today is different from Nepal of yesterday. Nepal of today is a hope, I think, for the entire Asia, and maybe I think for the entire world. Nepal is at the top, and I am very sure that good ideas will flow from Nepal, from Mount Everest, from Nepal to all the parts of the world. And this is, I think, at the peak there. So we can very easily see. The question is whether he also looks at us or not. So we are looking forward for his blessings, for his association, for his guidance in the time to come. IP needs it very, very badly. We are in the formative stage. World is changing, and in this changing world, you need people who are ahead of ideas. The time of which, would come in next 10, 20, 30 years. Hafizji is again internationally known person. My colleague introduced, and it was very difficult for me to then understand how a person can do so many things. How a person can get a place of pride in an international body like ADB, because shareholding of ADB, you find, US is there, many other countries, Australia is there, many other countries are there. And then when they are arguing the case for Asia, is very, very difficult. But I understand that during the period he was there, 8 or 10 years, he did lots of things for Asia. And he became the voice of Asia in the ADB. Sir, we are extremely grateful to you for taking all the trouble, he missed his flight also, you can understand, I think, there was so much pressure of work on him. IPE, and also a word from Dr. Samar Verma that in any case, you have to visit IPE, it's an important thing that we'll discuss about there. We are very grateful to him. Also to Dr. Kalyan Chakravarti, who at the ETPRI, again an institution of very great repute, an institution which was set up long back and has given a big lead to entire South, also to entire country, which works with several eminent organizations in India and abroad. We are very grateful to him. He is a very experienced civil servant, brings a lot of knowledge of environment, not only of this state or composite state of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, but also from the government of India, where he was a very senior Joint Secretary and he was in different departments over there. Today also, he is hard pressed for time. I understand that minister will not be able to stand and speak unless he is there. That's the condition not only of Telangana, that's the condition of the entire country today. Civil services, I think, they are the spine of the country. And I say that all civil services have done a commendable job. They have given a system which has kept the country together. So whenever I talk about India, I will say that India is there, among other things, also because of a civil service, where the people from different states, and they have the culture not only of that state, but the culture of the country. When you talk about the culture of the country, I think this is civil services they bring there. Let me speak a few words about Dr. Janaki and Dr. Lakshmi. We are proud of them, and we are very happy to know that IP is one among the 100 think tanks in the field of environment. The world is very big, and these two colleagues, plus Dr. Anupma, Kiran, Karuna, they have done commendable job. I think the training program they do here, the research program they do here, the global research they take here, the kind of publications they do here, the citations that they have on different indexes like Scopus, Reuters and all that. Sir, their citations are more than the citations for entire management schools and universities in Telangana. In Telangana alone, I am very proud of the fact, in Telangana, in Hyderabad, we have more number of universities than Delhi. Though Delhi is the capital of India, but we have more number of universities and institutes in Hyderabad. And they are our leaders, I think. And a leader always leads, but if women is a leader, then chances of success they become, they increase, I think, phenomenally. And here, we have not only Dr. Janaki, but also Dr. Lakshmi. Together they are leading us in that area. They have done wonderful work. On that note, I also welcome my colleagues here and also all the universities. I understand they are very senior officials from the various government departments. and they hold very high positions, especially I see SAP from the Center for Good Governance, which is again the first institute in the area of good governance in India. Delhi and all other places, they set up such schools much later. Because I think the composite state for one place which gave the lead. So we have him there, we have water board, senior colleagues over there, and we have a group of very senior people here who have come from different parts of India. They come from universities, they come from organizations, they are in the area of climate change. And also, I take this note of making a special mention of Supriyaji, who is from ONGC. ONGC is a big enterprise. I always say ONGC budget is more than the budget of several states of India. If you take entire Northeast plus some states in the plains, then also ONGC budget is much more. And the money that they spend on the environment, and also to the extent they damage the environment, that I think we have to look into, because they go below the earth, crust of the earth. Then you have the gases over there. They are the leading enterprise, and I welcome them too. We look forward to very, very interesting dialogue, to very interesting deliberations, to a great deal of learning. I'll also say that India is a country which we have always talked of sustainable development. We all want to Sangam Vat, Sangam Dhaj, Sangam Char. This is the philosophy of this country, that we live together, we grow together. I also would like to quote Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who defined, I think, beauty in a different way, who defined God in a different way. And Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, he compared God with nature, that nature is God. And I think that's the point where so-called atheists and believers in gods, they come together. So, nature, I think, is something which gives us life. And nature tells us that we are there and you also live together. On that note, also, let me also tell you that we are on this campus and we are very lucky to be here. This is the only campus in India where we have 500,000 plants, trees. And each tree emits 28 tons of oxygen. I don't know what you are going to take back with you, but I am very confident that with the kind of dignitaries we have on dais, I think we will take, I think, wealth, unlimited wealth with you. But when you talk of life, I can assure you that by being here for 2 days, you are increasing your lifespan at least by 2 weeks. You all will live 2 weeks longer than what you are destined to be. This is, I think, the course. I think this is the campus, OU campus. It's one of the most beautiful campuses. So let us think of beauty, let us think of peace, let us think of joy, let us think of learning, and let us think of living together and have that feeling by which we live together and world also continues. Thank you very much.
It is the uniqueness of a director, the immense warmth he always showers on our guests through his welcome address. Thank you so very much, sir, for that. Sometimes people say climate change threatens the planet. Well, actually, the planet itself will survive. What is at stake here is humans' ability to live on this planet. The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will. I request Dr. P.S. Janaki Krishna, Conference Coordinator, to present major highlights of the conference and its relevance in the current scenario.
Sabhaya Namaha. Respected delegates on the dais, off the dais, invited speakers, distinguished delegates and participants, my dear colleagues. It's my pleasure to present a brief overview about the conference, the 2-day conference on national climate change and sustainable development, issues, challenges and opportunities. Before I talk on this conference, I would like to start with a prayer which was rendered at Rio Plus 20 Summit. I breathe in, I breathe out. I breathe in, I breathe out. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Creator of life, we thank for our breath and the air we breathe. Thank you for all of life that breathes at every moment. This was the prayer rendered at Rio Plus 20 Summit. But still we are talking about the issues and challenges. Why we have prayed? Because the problems are complex. Climate change, it's huge. It's a complex problem. It's a tricky problem. sustainable development, everything under the sun, everything on the earth, we want to bring under the umbrella of sustainable development. These are all very complex problems, so that's the reason we have targets for 15 years and 30 years. Rio 1982 Earth Summit, and again after 20 years we talked at Earth Summit Rio plus 20. At 1992 Earth Summit in Rio, a small girl, a 12-year-old girl, Suzuki, many of you might have heard about her. She is a famous environmentalist from Canada, Samar Verma might be knowing her well, and we might have had the opportunity to meet her. And she questioned at the 92 Earth Summit the integrity and the intentions of the older generations or the present generations, and he has argued what right the older generations to have to pass on this kind of environment to them, where the future generations will be able to sustain on this earth if the kind of earth we are passing on to the next generation. She has questioned that. So that's the reason again we are having challenges, again we are not discussing about those issues, and in many UN summits, all the parties to UN, India is also party to several conventions, whether it is UN framework on climate change mitigation or adaptation, or UN framework on sustainable development, India is party to it, or for that matter several nations are party to these UN conventions, and they always discuss about the modalities on how to meet these challenges, how to get the opportunities to meet the needs of these challenges, and they will also discuss about the issues. We at IPE, we have a center for sustainable development. It's a small center. We had a small beginning in the year 2013. In fact, IPE had large stints in working with environmentalists, and also IPE has worked a lot in the environment area. But we have confluenced these efforts into a center in the year 2012, and from then on we started working on climate change and environmental issues on a much more focused manner. Because of our efforts, as a director said, not only our efforts in the center, the institute has been working since the establishment in the year 1964. It is working on environmental issues. Because of these works, it is mentioned in one of the top 100 think tanks in the world by University of Pennsylvania. They have mentioned the think tanks for each and every area. For governance, they have mentioned, for several, and in energy, they have mentioned about the top 100 think tanks in the world. And it's a study done by a neutral party, done by the University of Pennsylvania. And they have mentioned, they have recognized the works that are being done by IPE, and they have mentioned among the top 100 think tanks in the world, IPE. And from then onwards, we have been working on environmental issues. And at this center, we have organized so far 3 conferences. The first conference is a national conference on climate change mitigation and adaptation. And the second conference is an international conference, climate change and sustainable development global perspective. And the third conference, we have conducted this in collaboration with Australia-India Council, wherein we discussed about the policy issues relating to urban climate resilience. And participants from Australia, participants from India, they have come together and they have discussed the issues relating to this urban climate resilience. This is our 4th annual conference. This is again a national conference on climate change issues and challenges. But I can say this is also an international conference because of presence of Dr. Samar Verma, Hafiz Ahmed Saab, and Manish Manandar. Sir, we could make this conference also as an international conference, and we have added an international feel to this conference. Coming to the conference, how we have designed the conference, we have received several papers, but what we thought is unless we have a focused discussion, we will not be able to get to any conclusion. So we have selected very few papers and we will be having very focused discussions in 3 technical sessions. The first session is on climate change mitigation and adaptation, and the second session is on water and waste management, and the third session is on sustainable development. In these 3 sessions, the papers ranged from in climate change mitigation and adaptation, we have read the issues relating to both adaptation and mitigation, and under water management, we have papers deliberating on the water scarcity and water about the water purity, everything under water. We have papers which have been discussing on the issues relating to water, and sustainable development, right from definition till the description about the sustainable development goals. We have papers. The 17 sustainable development goals have been taken over in the year 2015 from the 8 Millennium Development Goals. And if you look at these 17 sustainable development goals, we ourselves will be astonished whether we have the capacity to meet these goals. Even at UN also, they are wondering how to meet these goals, how to meet these challenges, and everybody is doing their bit, and we also do our bit, and we at our level we deliberate on these issues, and we will arrive at certain conclusions and recommendations. That is about the conference, and I would like to end with a saying: Creator and sustainer of all life, Mother Earth is the source of life, nourishment and learning, and provide everything we need to live. Help us to remember that Mother Earth is a living being. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, madam. Maybe I would just put the gist of the discussion, whatever madam has said, in a small poem, which is in Hindi. पर्यावरण बचाओ, आज समय की मांग यही है, पर्यावरण बचाओ। ध्वनि, मिट्टी, जलवायु आदि सब पर्यावरण हमारे, जीव जगत के मित्र सभी ये, जीवन दाता सारे। इनसे अपना नाता जोड़ो, इनको मित्र बनाओ, तब तक जीव है जगत में, जब तक जग में पानी। जब तक वायु शुद्ध रहती है, सोंधी मिट्टी रानी, तब तक मानव की जीवन है, यह सबको समझाओ। हरियाली की महिमा समझाओ, वृक्षों को पहचानो, ये मानव के जीवन दाता, इनको अपना बनाओ, मानो। आज समय की मांग यही है, पर्यावरण बचाओ। Thank you so very much, madam. Now I request Dr. Mohandas Manandar, advisor to DRAN on Nepal, to address the audience.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, respected delegates, as well as at the in front of me. First, thank you very much, me and Professor Mishra, to invite me. This is a great pleasure to be here at this institute and discussing about the sustainable development. Of course, I also thank Samar Varmati, which is basically through which I was connected to Professor Mishra. So thank you again. And Dr. Afiz, being part of this process, thank you very much for making it happen. At this address, I would want to focus on one specific topic of the climate change, and that is about vulnerability. I work at the network which is called Displacement Action Research Network at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We basically are the only network in MIT which focuses on human rights. And we are looking at two specific aspects of the vulnerability. One is about displacement, and another is about explosion, due to three external forces. One is about change in the external force, meaning change from nature, especially disaster and climate change. The second is about the change because of external force in terms of political conflict. And the third is, interestingly, about investment in development. And that's what I would be interested to talk about it, both in terms of natural climate, change in climates, or change in natural settings, but especially disaster. And also about the issue of development investment. This network is in a Department of Urban Studies and Planning and Studies. So therefore, the idea of how people are displaced and marginalized because of development, and we're talking about sustainable development here. Two issues that I want to address is in terms of vulnerability and how it operates around it. How do we therefore address it? The second issue is about institutions. In each of these external sources, the model that we have is focused on three aspects. One, about the physical infrastructure. Mostly that's what we look at. Because of other changes, the physical infrastructure changes, and therefore, especially the state would look at changing the physical infrastructure. The second issue is about state. How the policies and programs and resources is mobilized to address these changes in the human community, not only human community at this point in time, we're looking at overall environment as such. The third issue is about institutions, that is basically norms and values that each of the community or individual families hold in terms of adapting to change, and especially change which is large scale, which changes the way that the people live. As we know, in terms of, if you look at the aspect of the climate change itself, the effect is more towards the human beings. So therefore, primarily it also needs to address issues of vulnerability of humans. This includes three dimensions to it. One is exposure, the second is sensitivity, and the third is effective capacity of the system. In two of these dimensions, specifically the sensitivity and adaptive capacity, is affected in the affected system, is dependent on range of socioeconomic characteristics of the system. It may be income, or it may also be income inequality, or it may be a nutritional status, or access to the lifeline. So it changes the way that we look at the system itself. So let me come back to a simple example that would be helpful. We do not produce, or we do not sort of contribute towards more of a climate change. We are the ones who suffer from climate change. And most of the sufferers would be those who are marginalized communities, because they will be actually living near to the water bodies, either river or a sea or a pond, because their livelihood is connected to, most often would be connected to water. If you look around, and you would see that there are two distinct aspects of climate change is used as a discourse of climate change, used as a sort of a distinct technical dimension is what air, which is pollution, etc. And the second one is water, which also deals with weather, changes in temperature, etc. In the country like Nepal, we also deal with not only water bodies, but with also the issues of change in the Himalayas, and that changes a lot. We are very near to the mountains, which is with the snow-capped mountains. Gulf is another one, which destroys most of the sort of a natural system that we are in. So at this, if you look at it very carefully, we are not looking at a physical infrastructure such as irrigation structure or water system structure. We are looking at natural system across by which the livelihood of peoples are dependent. And we've seen many cases in Nepal, in India, in South Asia, or in the African nations where the water becomes so scarce that the pond needs to be, or a well needs to be protected with guns. Now, you will see that was happening also because, not because of scarcity of water, natural one, But because the drying of the river is happening, or the flooding of river is happening, in both without sort of expected cycle that could have been predicted through meteorological and hydrological data. So in that context, what happens is that we dealing with people who have less capacity and resources to adapt. One of the issues that always comes into play is how the state or a government supports these marginalized groups. There is a problem in terms of having an interaction between state and this marginalized group because they are already excluded or marginalized from the state resources anyway. Okay? Therefore, they are sort of in a remote area or outside the sphere of where they could have access to resources. So therefore, there is a distinct difficulties in addressing them in two distinct areas. One is that the marginalized communities, whether it's small or big, whether it is because of inequality in income or because of social exclusion due to identity, either religion or indigenousness or issues related to gender or issues related to their regionality. So with this, what happens is that their trust in the government is pretty low. They would not believe that government will come and help them. They of course believe in the God, and God has been angry now. I mean, I'm making it very simple. I do not think that's so simple as I am making, but it's very clearly seen by them that I'm not saying that they are very fundamentally sort of a faith on God only, but because they are dependent on environment and nature, their God means not only one God, but it's a natural resources nature provides them for their livelihood. So therefore, there is one, as I said, missing aspect of this citizen and state interaction, specifically about trust of them having a trust in the government for providing protection or providing services or resources for the communities, because they are vulnerable. That's already one aspect of it. The second aspect is about the government itself. Because we also know that the bureaucracy and the government systems are identical. They would have difficulty responding to issues that is not necessarily mainstream. That's what we are trying here, to make sure that mainstream happens. There is another part to it, and that's what I'm coming back to, is about the development investment. Most of the government development investment would focus on two areas. One is economics, another, that means market, another is infrastructure. Clearly, because that's what it seems from a modern era of Europe and Asia, Europe and US, where technology has taken over, and it seems modernization means infrastructure. And when you build infrastructure, actually you are displacing many marginalized population from their livelihood and from their homes. And they may get some economic sort of not replacement, but economic, because of affected population, they may get some economic or some money with it, but what they are losing is a livelihood asset. And that's probably where we need to focus in terms of development. So two areas, as I said. One is how do we therefore deal with local communities and their ways of adapting to change due to climate. At this point of time, there is none in terms of methodology, in terms of methods to do research, to find it out how they adapt to. There is none. We know that they are starting to adapt, and they probably had adapted for quite a long time, but we do not have a social research methodology to define how do we find it out how they adapt to the change. Of course, as a human being for millions of years, we have been adapting to change, therefore we are here. But how do they adapt as a marginalized community? Not also because that they are marginalized by some barriers, but also because that we believe that they are weak in terms of adapting Perhaps they are stronger. We do not know yet. So there is one distinct need for us to find it out, the methodology by which then we find how they adapt. We had case studies to see how the river changes, the drying up well, the ponds has happened, the communities have shifted their livelihood, etc. And then we've done some of the case studies, but remember, these case studies are used through methods that's quite different than what we actually wanted to find out. So one aspect that is required for us to find is to define this methodology, to find out how they sort of adapt, which would then therefore gives the state or other agencies to sort of address issues of their issues or provide resources according to the ways that they are. So that's something that is required. The second, as I suggested earlier, is clearly well positioned and placed in the state and government mainly. It's true that we are sectoral in our government ministries, therefore agriculture ministry and water ministry may not have a pretty good relationship. But looking at the climate change, three of the ministries needs to come together. One is about water, environment, hydrology, meteorology together, including data. Second is about agriculture, coming together. It's very interesting. The third is the basic idea of social aspects to it, and social, not only social development, provide social protection, including health, education. So how do they come is a difficult question to answer. But in any case, even if they do not come, even if we would not bring all the ministries together as a unitary system or a combined system to address this issue, but at least we needed to make sure that the government institutions are not only focusing on investment to the infrastructure, but also focusing on issues that pertains to, for example, policies. For example, if some communities were displaced from one area and went to another area, then do the government have a social protection policy which by they provide livelihood system to them? Do we have some policies that would actually provide resources or jobs or livelihood or land also in the forest area? Do we have? It's a pretty difficult political questions that we are addressing here. So it's true that it seems from our side, modernization aspect, we would be pretty much interested, inclined to investment in infrastructure, but it's quite difficult to shift our position towards looking at social institutions and other aspect of livelihood infrastructure. That would need this platform by which I assume that these discussions will continue and will provide some insights for us, each of us from different spaces of state, including academia, including research institutes, government and civil society to look at and find these ways of managing or helping, supporting the communities who are trying to adapt. So these rules of the game needs to be looked at very crucial. And I know this seminar would also look at some of these aspects. I hope I would want to again wish for success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for throwing light on the various aspects of climate change, vulnerability, institution participation, etc.